The hallway was 4 feet wide. No room to dodge, no room to run. 4 men blocked both exits. Baseball bats, brass knuckles, a knife. They had Bumpy Johnson cornered in the worst possible place. No weapon, no backup, no way out. 3 minutes later, all 4 men were on the floor, unconscious, broken bones. And Bumpy Johnson walked out, straightened his tie, and went to dinner like nothing happened. This is the story of what happens when you corner a king. November 22nd, 1954. A Tuesday evening in Harlem, the night Bumpy Johnson reminded everyone why you don't ambush a man who grew up fighting in the cramped cells of Sing Sing. To understand what happened in that hallway, you need to understand the building. 447 West, 145th Street. 5-story walk-up, no elevator, narrow staircases, even narrower hallways. The kind of old Harlem building where neighbors knew each other's business, and walls were thin enough to hear conversations 3 apartments away. Bumpy was visiting an old friend, Marcus Doc Williams. 3rd floor, apartment 3D. Doc was a retired numbers runner who'd worked for Bumpy in the 40s. Good man, loyal, now he was sick, lung cancer, and Bumpy made it a point to visit every Tuesday evening, brought food, sat, and talked. Reminded Doc he wasn't forgotten. It was a routine, and routines are dangerous when you have enemies. The Torino brothers had been watching Bumpy for 3 weeks, small-time crew out of the Bronx trying to make a name. They'd lost territory to Bumpy 6 months ago when he'd expanded his policy banks into their neighborhood. They wanted revenge, wanted to prove they weren't afraid of the so-called King of Harlem. There were 4 of them. Paulie Torino, the oldest, 28, built like a truck. He carried a Louisville Slugger baseball bat. His brother Nicky, 25, brass knuckles on both hands. Cousin Frankie, 22, had a switchblade. And their enforcer, a guy named Gus the Wrench Santoro, carried a crowbar. They weren't stupid. They knew they couldn't take Bumpy in an open fight, so they planned an ambush. Confined space, no escape routes. 4 against 1. November 22nd, 7:15 p.m. Bumpy walked into the building at 447 West 145th Street. He was dressed in his usual 3-piece suit, navy blue, perfectly pressed. He carried a paper bag with chicken soup and fresh bread for Doc. He didn't notice the black sedan parked across the street. Didn't see the 4 men slip into the building behind him. Bumpy climbed the stairs. 1st floor, 2nd floor. His footsteps echoed in the stairwell. He was thinking about Doc, about how the cancer was progressing, about whether Doc's daughter was visiting enough. He reached the 3rd floor landing, turned left into the hallway. Apartment 3D was at the end. He started walking. That's when he heard it. Footsteps behind him. Too many, too close. Bumpy stopped, didn't turn around, just stopped and listened. 4 sets of footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Men trying to be quiet, but failing. He glanced ahead. 2 more men had just stepped out from the stairwell at the other end of the hallway, blocking his exit, front and back, trapped. The hallway was narrow, 4 feet wide, barely enough room for 2 people to pass each other. Dim lighting, 1 bulb flickering at the far end, doors on both sides, but they'd be locked. Nobody opened their door when they heard trouble in Harlem hallways. Bumpy set the paper bag down gently against the wall, straightened up, turned around. Paulie Torino stood 10 feet behind him, baseball bat resting on his shoulder. Nicky was beside him, cracking his knuckles, the brass catching the dim light. "Bumpy Johnson," Paulie said, smiling. "We've been waiting for this." Bumpy looked at them calmly, looked at the 2 men behind him blocking the other exit, looked back at Paulie. "You boys picked a bad night." "Bad night for you," Nicky laughed. "You're cornered, nowhere to run." Bumpy tilted his head slightly. "Who said anything about running?" Paulie's smile faded. "You know who we are? Torino brothers, Bronx crew. You're mad about the policy banks." Bumpy's voice was conversational, almost bored. "I warned your boss to stay out of Harlem. He didn't listen, lost his territory. Now you're here trying to save face." "We're here to kill you," Frankie said, pulling out his switchblade. The blade clicked open. Bumpy glanced at the knife, then back at Paulie. 4 of you, weapons, narrow hallway. You think you've got me trapped, but let me explain something about fighting in close quarters. He paused. Your numbers don't matter. Your weapons are too big for this space. That bat? He pointed at Paulie. You can't swing it properly in a 4-foot hallway. You'll hit the walls, and the second you try, you're wide open. Paulie's grip on the bat tightened. You're bluffing. Only one way to find out, Bumpy said quietly. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The hallway was dead silent except for the flickering light bulb buzzing overhead. Then Paulie charged, raised the bat over his head, tried to swing down. Bumpy was right. The hallway was too narrow. The bat hit the wall before it could complete the arc. Plaster cracked. The bat bounced off. Bumpy stepped inside Paulie's reach. One punch, straight to the solar plexus. Paulie's breath exploded out of him. He doubled over. Bumpy grabbed the bat out of Paulie's hands. Spun. Nicky was coming at him with brass knuckles raised. Bumpy swung the bat low, connected with Nicky's knee, a crack. Nicky screamed, went down. 7 seconds, 2 men down. Frankie came at him with the knife, stabbing motion. Wild, desperate. Bumpy sidestepped in the narrow space. The knife missed by inches, embedded in the wall. Frankie tried to pull it out. Bumpy brought the bat down on Frankie's wrist. Another crack. The knife stayed in the wall. Frankie clutched his broken wrist, screaming. The 2 men at the other end of the hallway, Gus and another enforcer, started moving toward Bumpy. Gus had the crowbar raised, but now Bumpy had room. Paulie and Nicky were on the floor behind him. Frankie was against the wall, cradling his wrist. Gus swung the crowbar. Horizontal swing. Bumpy ducked. The crowbar smashed into the wall, punched through the plaster. Gus tried to pull it out. Stuck. Bumpy didn't wait. Stepped forward. One punch to Gus's jaw. Gus's head snapped back, hit the wall. He slid down unconscious. The last man, the 4th enforcer, looked at his 3 partners on the ground. Looked at Bumpy standing in the hallway, not even breathing hard. He turned and ran, bolted down the stairwell. Gone. The entire fight had lasted 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Bumpy dropped the bat, straightened his suit jacket, checked his watch. 7:18 p.m. He'd lost 3 minutes. Behind him, apartment doors started opening, cautiously. Mrs. Washington from 3C peeked out, saw the 3 men on the floor, saw Bumpy standing calmly in the middle of the hallway. Evening, Mrs. Washington, Bumpy said politely. She just stared. Bumpy picked up his paper bag, checked inside. The soup container had cracked slightly but was salvageable. He walked past the groaning men on the floor, stepped over Paulie, who was still gasping for air, and knocked on apartment 3D. Doc opened the door, looked at Bumpy, looked at the hallway behind him. The 3 men on the floor, the holes in the walls, the baseball bat and crowbar. Bad timing? Doc asked. Little bit, Bumpy said, but I brought soup. They went inside, closed the door. 10 minutes later, police arrived. Someone had called from one of the apartments. 3 injured men in the hallway, 2 with broken bones, 1 unconscious. The responding officers were from the 32nd Precinct. They knew Bumpy. Everyone in Harlem knew Bumpy. Officer Daniels knocked on apartment 3D. Bumpy answered, Mr. Johnson, we got a call about a disturbance. Is that right? Bumpy said calmly. 3 men in the hallway, injured. Any idea what happened? Bumpy shrugged. I heard some noise when I arrived. Sounded like a fight. But I was visiting my friend. Didn't want to get involved. Officer Daniels looked past Bumpy into the apartment, saw Doc sitting at the table eating soup, saw everything calm and peaceful. The men outside say you attacked them. 4 armed men attacked 1 unarmed man bringing soup to a sick friend? Bumpy raised an eyebrow. Does that sound right to you, Officer Daniels? Daniels sighed. He looked back at the hallway, at Paulie Torino, who was being loaded onto a stretcher, still gasping for breath, at Nicky with the shattered knee, at Frankie cradling his broken wrist. They had weapons, Daniels said quietly. Bat, crowbar, brass knuckles, knife stuck in the wall. Sounds dangerous, Bumpy said. Good thing I stayed in the apartment. Daniels knew what had happened. Everyone knew what had happened. But proving it was another matter. And honestly, 4 armed men ambushing someone in a hallway? That was assault. Self-defense was legal. Mr. Johnson, I'm going to need you to come down to the station, answer some questions. Of course, officer. Let me just finish my visit with Doc. He's not doing well. Cancer. I'd hate to leave him alone. Daniels nodded. Half an hour, then we'll need a statement. Absolutely. The officers left. Loaded the Torino brothers and Gus into ambulances. All 3 would spend the night in the hospital. Broken bones, concussions, trauma. The 4th man, the one who'd run, was found 2 hours later trying to leave the city. He told police he wasn't pressing charges. He just wanted to forget the whole thing. Bumpy never went to the station. Officer Daniels knew he wouldn't. And honestly, nobody wanted to prosecute this case. 4 armed men ambush 1 unarmed man and end up in the hospital? That's not a case. That's a lesson. The story spread through Harlem that night. By morning, everyone knew. Bumpy Johnson had been ambushed in a narrow hallway. 4 men, armed, trapped him. And he'd put all 4 down in less than 3 minutes. The Torino brothers left New York a week later, moved to Philadelphia, never spoke about what happened in that hallway. But people who knew them said they were never the same, walked with limps, jumped at shadows. Years later, a reporter asked Bumpy about the incident. Mr. Johnson, is it true you fought 4 armed men in a hallway and won? Bumpy smiled. I didn't fight anyone. I was visiting a sick friend. But the police report says 3 men were injured in a hallway. Doesn't say how, doesn't say who. Bumpy leaned forward. But I'll tell you something about ambushes. They only work if the person you're ambushing doesn't know how to fight. I grew up in Charleston fighting 3-4 boys at a time in alleys narrower than that hallway. I survived Sing Sing, where you fight in cells 6 feet wide. You think 4 guys with bats scare me? He paused. People who try to corner me always make the same mistake. They think confined spaces give them an advantage. But confined spaces are my home. Always have been. November the 22nd, 1954. The night the Torino brothers learned that you don't ambush a king in his kingdom. And you definitely don't corner a man who spent his entire life learning how to fight in tight spaces. If this story inspired you, smash that subscribe button. Drop a like if you understand that experience beats numbers every time. Share this with someone who needs to know that real fighters don't need room. They just need skill. What would you have done in that hallway? Let me know in the comments. More legendary stories coming next. Don't miss them.